Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
Tomorrow is Bill of Rights Day. And what an irony that tomorrow is Bill of Rights Day, because a friend of mine is facing trial where he actually is going before a jury trial. He's been charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest for daring to act as independent media to cover an incident in which there was a standoff between police and a suicidal man who unfortunately wound up taking his own life. But my friend was there on the scene, acting as media, trying to film what was going on. And, well, the police came over and said, Mr. Cleveland, you need to back up. And so he backed up a little bit, and then they came back over and they said, you need to back up again. And then he backed up again, and then they came over a third time and said, you need to back up. And he said, listen, I've already backed up twice. The supervisor guy said that I could be here, so I'm comfortable here. I'm not in the way. I'm not interfering with anything. And they said, well, then you just need to completely leave if you're not going to back up. And he was like, no. And so then they said, all right, well, you're under arrest. And he said, I'm not resisting. And they charged him with resisting arrest and disorderly conduct because he did not continue to back up. And he's already taken this to trial once. And one thing that's interesting, because of the level of offense that he was charged with, they charged him with a Class A misdemeanor. That means that he can take it to a jury trial. So he did the regular bench trial in front of the judge, and he was found guilty. And so he did this thing they call a de novo trial. That basically means start from the beginning, and it's going to a jury, and that begins tomorrow. I will be live tweeting the event tomorrow, and based on what happened today at jury selection, I understand that the trial might go 2 days, which if it does, that means that the Ask Me Anything on Wednesday will be postponed, and I will answer the questions on Friday. That is, if the trial goes too long and I'm not able to do the show on Wednesday. But I will be live tweeting that using hashtag PINAC, which stands for Photography is Not a Crime. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about what I did over the weekend. I did something that I had never done before. I visited the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantation. And yes, that is the full name for the state of Rhode Island. Most people just call it Rhode Island. The full name, the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantation. What was I doing in Rhode Island? I went to Liberty Love Fest number 5. And it was a pretty good event. I had no clue what to expect because I had never been to Liberty Love Fest before. And they actually held the first couple of Liberty Love Fest in Massachusetts. They've since moved them to Rhode Island. And it was a pretty good event. One of the organizers said there was about 100 people. A lot of them were sort of like hanging out outside of the event and then just sort of coming in sporadically. But I think that at one time there were probably about 50, 60 people in the room. And I did get to give a speech about my presidential campaign, and so I'll post the link. I had somebody live stream that for me, so I'll post the link to the video in the show notes. You can watch that if you want to. And they had this interesting thing to where they had musical acts and speakers, and they mixed them together. So there would be a speaker, a musical act, a speaker, a musical act, and then a couple speakers, and then musical act. Jordan Page was the final act. He wound up played for probably about an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. And he's just an amazing guy. He actually does the intro music to this show. So the music that you hear coming in at the beginning of the show and then going into the breaks and coming out of the breaks, that's actually Jordan Page. That is War Machine by Jordan Page. And he's got some new music, and he's not paying me to say this, but he does have a new album, so you can go to his website. I believe it's jordanpagemusic.com. I'll find the link and put it in the show notes. But one thing that was interesting about this event, one of the vendors that also wound up giving a brief presentation, she sells essential oils. And she was talking about there are ways that I have to craft what I say because of the FDA. The FDA has basically restricted the freedom of speech when it comes to saying certain things about what certain products do. Or it doesn't even have to be a product. It would be illegal under federal statute and regulations for me to make the following statement as a claim, a statement of fact. The following is illegal. Water cures dehydration. That is illegal. Why is that illegal? Well, because you're making a medical claim about a substance. You are saying that water, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, will cure dehydration. Dehydration is a symptom of not having, or rather it's the condition of not having enough water. Hydration, dehydration, not enough water, not enough fluids in your body. It's illegal to say that water will cure that, because that then makes some sort of medical claim about what water can do. And the FDA has said that, well, no, we are the final arbiters of what is a truthful claim about what can and cannot cure things. So you can't say that unless it's been tested and proven and blah, 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 blah. It would also be illegal to say that oranges cure scurvy, even though it's been known for hundreds of years that scurvy is the condition in which your body lacks vitamin C. Oranges have vitamin C, so therefore eating oranges or drinking orange juice will cure scurvy. It is illegal to make that claim that oranges cure scurvy. Again, it's because, well, we can't have people making claims. But it's this weird thing to where they're using, like the guise of protecting people from fraud to prevent free speech. And so the presentation that was given on the essential oils was basically about how essential oil representatives and salespeople have to sort of, use terms of art, if you will, to basically tell you what it is that the essential oils do. And it's absolutely ludicrous. But again, that is the freedom that we live in here in the USSA, right? To where the Bill of Rights means you don't have any. Stay tuned. I want to tell you about some Asian women that had their rights denied. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
FiendPhone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of FiendPhone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve FiendPhone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, Echo, November, phone.com.
FiendPhone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
So before I get into the story from Reason.com, I want to make sure that I tell you about a way that you can actually exercise your right to buy what you want with the money that you want, assuming, of course, that you advocate for free market money and use Bitcoin as an alternative in this fiat-centric world. You need Spend-A-Bit in your arsenal. Spend-A-Bit is the search engine for things you can buy, you guessed it, with Bitcoin. Spend-A-Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend a bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin-accepting merchant like I am, you need to ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. spendabit.fppradio.com. So, an interesting headline from Reason.com. It's from their Hit and Run blog. Asian girl band detained at LAX because officials think they must be sex workers. The article, as I said, from Reason.com says, hold on to your Fourth Amendment rights, folks. A new kind of racial profiling is coming to America because really, why would a group of young Asian women come here if not to enter the sex trade? At least, that seems to be the attitude of U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials who detained the South Korean pop band Oh My Girls at Los Angeles International Airport last week after suspecting the young women of being sex workers. And now I'm looking at a photo here of the girls, and the photo is on the Reason website. And I do not at all get the impression that any of them are sex workers. They all just look like, regular average girls, and they're making the little heart sign with their hands, or at least several of them are, and a couple of them are throwing up peace signs, and two of them appear to be holding a cake. But, yeah, like they don't look at all like what you would expect a sex worker to be dressed like. They just look like regular people. But apparently, to the Customs and Border Patrol people, well, any young Asian woman must be a sex worker, right? The article continues. It says, on December 9th, the 8 band members in Los Angeles for a photo shoot and concert were denied entry to LAX and held for 15 hours while officials questioned them. That, according to a statement from the management of Oh My Girls. Eventually, the band gave up and went back home. So, yes, instead of, being allowed to come into the country and have a photo shoot and have a concert and, actually be productive people, they were detained by Border Patrol for 15 hours and eventually said, screw it, we're going back to Korea. The statement from the management of the band Oh My Girls says the person in charge of customs asked Oh My Girls and the staff what relationship they had with each other, and one of the staff used the word sister, and a misunderstanding occurred. They thought it was strange that they were not blood related, but said they were sisters. And so they took extra attention to the large quantity of items and outfits they had. And since the members are young girls, they were mistaken as working women, i.e., prostitutes, which the U.S. has a big issue with right now. After the misunderstanding was resolved, we were sent back to the airport immigration office and had communication with the airport staff, and our opinion was not straightened out, and in the previous step, our phones were seized, and it was an extreme situation where we could not contact anyone outside. The company was detained for a long period of 15 hours, and we decided to go back to Korea because the members who were tired physically and emotionally. A lawyer in the U.S. is taking the effort to make sure that the unjust treatment of being detained is valid or not. We sincerely apologize for causing anxiety and thank everyone who worried for us. A spokesman for U.S. Customs and Border Protection told the L.A. Times that it could neither confirm nor deny the group story. But, quote, the Korean language media in Los Angeles has reported anecdotally that young South Korean women are increasingly facing scrutiny from immigration authorities based on the suspicion that they may be entering the country to illegally work in the Koreatown nightlife scene. In other cities across the country, Asian-owned massage parlors have been facing increasing scrutiny by law enforcement officers and legislators who assume 3 businesses must be prostitution or sex trafficking fronts. And I guess that should be who assume the businesses. Further compounding the injury, media reporting on such efforts gives the impression that almost all such businesses and their employees are suspect, which certainly can't be good for non-illicit businesses or workers' future job prospects. Why would a legit massage parlor hire Asian women if they know it's likely to provoke public ire and police scrutiny? They ask. The article then concludes, the fear-mongering has paved the way for new regulations on all massage businesses, such as a Columbus, Ohio law which prevents anyone with a previous drug conviction from becoming a masseuse. A California law enables city governments to demand additional permits and background checks. A law in Florida requires all masseuses to obtain a state license at the cost of $500 and $10,000 and between $10,000 to $20,000. It's also led to an uptick in police raids on massage parlors, which can be bad news even when workers are giving legitimate legal massages. Police who don't find signs of sex trafficking at these businesses aren't likely to just go home. However, there will be petty paperwork violations to prosecute, immigration documents to investigate, or people to kick out of their jobs because they couldn't pay the state $20,000 for a permission slip before starting work. And, it's not just in Florida and California and Columbus, Ohio. There are things all over the country to where, police will just go in and start harassing people about stuff and say, oh, well, you don't have this, or your doorway is only 30 inches wide. It should be 32, or it should be 36, or whatever. And, it's these petty paperwork violations. And people wonder why there are fewer entrepreneurs now, because it's so incredibly difficult to start a legitimate business that most people just decide, you know what, screw it. Screw it. I'll go to work. I'll work for the man, and I'll bring home a paycheck, and I don't have to worry about it. But yet they do have to worry about it because you've got these stuff that winds up, you've got people now that, they've worked long and hard for years and years to wind up earning $14 or $15 per hour. And you've got young kids saying everybody should make $15 per hour. Well, what happens to the guy that's worked for 10 years to get those raises? Well, he's going to wind up getting screwed if minimum wage goes up to $15 per hour. There's more that I want to talk to you about, so stay tuned here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent, but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous, but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Let's end the show today with some good news. And what would be better news than to report that for the first time ever, this according to the Washington Post, for the first time ever, people in the what they classify as extreme poverty is below 10% of the world population. And this, in my mind, is very good news. And it just goes to show that, this is what happens when trade occurs. And I've done the research before of, people in China, for instance, that once China opened up to more trade, the people in poverty there has decreased. Well, now the percentage of people in what's classified as extreme poverty has decreased to below 10% for the first time ever. The story, again, comes from the Washington Post. And they report the World Bank provided some relief from bad news this week with some fresh positive data. For the first time ever, it estimates the number of people around the world living in extreme poverty to fall below 10%. Using an updated international poverty line of approximately $1.90 U.S. per day, the bank estimated the global poverty has fallen from 12.8% of the world's population in 2012 to 9.6% of the world's population in 2015. The new figures raise hope that extreme poverty could be eliminated in the near future. Jim Yong Kim, president of the World Bank, said in a statement, "This is the best story of the world today. These projections show us that we are the first generation in human history that can end extreme poverty. The new figures are certainly remarkable when you consider that just 25 years ago, more than a third of the world was living in what was classified extreme poverty, according to the World Bank. Despite the rising population all around the world, there are less than half the number of people living in extreme poverty in 2015 than there were in 1990. And that's in total number as well as in percentage. So in 1990, there were approximately 1.958 billion people in extreme poverty, and today there are 700 million people in extreme poverty. And again, that is classified at living below $1.90 U.S. per day. The article continues. It says, last week, the United Nations announced a plan to end extreme poverty by 2030, using the World Bank's previous measure of $1.25 a day. A prior UN plan to halve the number of those living in extreme poverty, set in 2000, is the only millennial development goal that has been achieved so far, primarily because of economic growth in China. And China was the country that I mentioned specifically, where there are statistics that have shown after China opened up to more trade that the number of people living in both, quote unquote, regular poverty and extreme poverty have declined drastically there. The World Bank stresses that its new forecast shows that factors such as strong growth in developing countries and investment in people's education, health, and social safety have had a big effect on global poverty rates. Kim, that's the president of the World Bank, said this new forecast of poverty falling into the single digits should give us new momentum and help us focus even more clearly on the most effective strategies to end extreme poverty. But the bank also noted that despite considerable improvements, poverty remained a serious problem in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. The situation in those regions is a remarkable contrast to East Asia, where levels of extreme poverty are predicted to drop from more than 60% to 4.1% in 2015. Now, something that is not mentioned specifically in here, but it's sort of hinted at, is the theory of the fixed pie. And if you're not familiar with the theory of the fixed pie, it's the theory that, well, there's only so much wealth to go around, and if one person has, a quote-unquote larger share of the pie, then that means everybody else gets a smaller share. But when you look at these statistics and you see that there are more people that are out of what's classified as extreme poverty, you're not hearing that, there aren't as many rich people. In fact, I often hear about the growing whatever, like the number of rich people is going up. And yes, the amount of total wealth is increasing. And you'll also hear people look at some of these statistics but sort of skew them and say, well, the gap between rich and poor is increasing. And yes, it kind of is, but let me give you an example. If I have $5 and you have $50, you have 10 times more money than I do. That's simple math. If I then wind up producing a bunch of stuff, or even not a bunch, but a little bit of stuff, and I then wind up having $50, and you produce more stuff, and then you have $500, you still have 10 times more stuff than I do, but we are both 10 times better off. And the wealth disparity, it went from $45 to $450. But again, we're both better off. And that's one of those sort of weird sort of things that people do. And I talk about this all the time, to where statistics can be used to prove anything. So you can look at those statistics and say, look, both people are better off when they produce things. And somebody else could look at the statistic and say, yes, but the wealth distribution, it's even more out of whack than it previously was, and this is why we need socialism, or this is why we need this, or this is why we need this government program. But no, you don't need these government programs. What you need is to allow free people to do things freely, as long as they are not causing unjust harm to anyone else. That means that if you've got a group of 8 young women from Korea that want to come to the U.S. and play a concert, and people want to buy those tickets, they should be allowed to do that. You should not harass them and detain them at the border because you think that every woman from Korea is a prostitute. And it's just absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. And it goes to show sort of some of, what's called the systemic racism of the system, to where you see things all the time about, oh, well, young black kid was walking through a neighborhood and he had something in his hand. I thought it was a gun. Well, it turns out it was a Twix bar or a camera. Well, young Asian woman trying to come into the country. I thought she was a prostitute. No, she's a pop singer. Hey, don't forget, every Wednesday, I answer your questions. Send those to me, ama@fppradio.com. And follow the trial of James Cleveland on Twitter tomorrow, possibly Wednesday, #PINAC.